How many signs do you need to ignore before admitting the obvious? Niccolò Machiavelli in The Prince wrote that human nature is predictable and betrayal follows patterns as clear as political battles. 8 behaviors she always shows before breaking the commitment. Behaviors that romantic men call difficult phases and strategic men recognize as warning signs. You can keep pretending that love conquers all, or you can learn to read the signs your own relationship is sending you right now. The Florentine philosopher taught that knowing human nature is the difference between those who govern and those who are governed. In relationships, the difference between those who anticipate and those who are surprised. You'll discover 8 behaviors women always show before cheating, signs as predictable as the strategies he studied in Discourses on Livy. In the end, you'll know how to read these patterns and make decisions based on reality, not hope. When she stops fighting with you, she starts fighting against you. Mentally, in silence. As Machiavelli documented in his analyses of political alliances, the end of an agreement never begins with open war, but with strategic distancing. Researchers at the University of Washington discovered that couples who stop arguing completely are 90% more likely to separate in the next 6 months than those who maintain healthy conflicts. Silence isn't peace, it's disguised surrender. Think about the last time you had a real argument. An argument where she tried to change something about you, where she expressed genuine frustration. If it's been more than a month, she might be following the first pattern, progressive emotional disengagement. This happens because emotional transparency requires emotional investment. When a woman stops fighting for the relationship, it's because mentally she's already left it. Carl Jung, in Psychological Types, explains that people only invest energy in what they still consider salvageable. Criticism, fights, attempts at change mean she still sees a future with you. Emotional silence is mental abandonment in progress. There's a difference between built harmony and masked indifference. In harmony, she still reacts to what you do. In indifference, she simply doesn't care anymore. The first sign is the most dangerous because it's the easiest to rationalize. You think she's more mature, less dramatic, calmer. Actually, she's psychologically preparing for a breakup, creating emotional distance before physical distance. Now observe something completely different. If she needs more likes than she needs you, something has changed. And it wasn't technology. It was her emotional priority. Robert Cialdini, in Psychology of Persuasion, documents how people seek external validation when they feel internal insecurity. Imagine each like, each comment, each social media interaction as a small deposit of validation. The emotional bank account you used to feed is being closed, and she's opening a new one. Public, visible, accessible to any man with internet. You know the sequence. She starts posting more photos alone. Then, group photos without you. Responds to comments she used to ignore. Stays online later, but responds to your messages with delay. When you ask about it, she says it's nothing serious. She just wants to feel good about herself. It's true, she wants to feel good about herself. The question is, why does she need external validation for that to happen? And why isn't your validation enough anymore? UCLA studies on digital behavior show that women in stable relationships have 60% less social media activity than single or dissatisfied women. Not because they're controlled, but because they have consistent validation at home. When this search for external approval intensifies without apparent reason, it's because internal approval, your approval, has lost emotional value for her. I'm not talking about women who were always active on social media. I'm talking about pattern change, women who were discreet and became exposed, who responded to comments politely and now respond with subtle flirting, who posted occasionally and now document every moment of life without you. There's a difference between healthy self-esteem and desperate search for male validation. The first is internal and stable. The second is external and addictive. The third pattern reveals how she processes information differently before betrayal. Women hide through strategic omission, not malicious lies. There's a fundamental difference between how she communicated at the beginning of the relationship and how she communicates when mentally preparing to leave it. Before she shared details, where she was, who she talked to, what she ate for lunch, comments colleagues made, small workplace dramas, irrelevant gossip you shared because intimacy is made of these everyday nonsense that only matters to those who love each other. Now she answers basic questions with minimal information. Work was good. Lunch was normal, nothing much happened. Her life became a 3-sentence executive summary. In his studies on diplomacy, Described in The Art of War, Machiavelli noticed that ambassadors planning to change sides always changed conversation tone weeks before. They stopped sharing internal details, avoided sensitive subjects, gave vague answers about future plans. Transparency decreases when loyalty wavers. Think about the last deep conversation you had, not about relationship problems, about life, dreams, silly fears, day-to-day situations she would normally share with you. If it's been more than 2 weeks, she might be following the third behavioral pattern. This happens because emotional transparency requires emotional investment. When she shares life details, she's building intimacy. When she stops sharing, she's deconstructing it. Also, observe how she responds when you ask specific questions. Before she elaborated, now short answers. Before she asked back about your day, now she listens politely and changes the subject. Mutual interest in each other's daily details is a reliable thermometer of emotional engagement. Communication becomes functional instead of connective. She answers what you ask, but doesn't offer extra information. The fourth sign happens in the mirror before it happens in real life. When she gets prettier, for whom? This question should be obvious, but most men prefer the comfortable answer to the true answer. They see their girlfriend taking better care of her hair, buying new clothes, going to the gym more, and think, good, she's valuing herself. She's taking care of herself, maybe. Or maybe she's unconsciously preparing to be available again. University of Toronto research reveals that women intensify physical appearance care by 400% during the 3 months preceding a breakup, not consciously, but as an instinctive response preparing for re-entry into the relationship market. There's an evolutionary pattern behind this transformation. When a woman dresses up a lot for casual activities, part of the conscious or unconscious motivation is to test her attractiveness in the market. See if she still sparks interest. Confirm she still has options. I'm not saying every woman who takes care of herself is planning to cheat. I'm talking about sudden pattern change. Women who were relaxed at home and became obsessive about appearance, who bought clothes sporadically and now renew their wardrobe every month, who went to the gym when they could and now have a religious exercise schedule. The fundamental question is, for what occasion is she preparing? Pay special attention to new underwear. Women in stable relationships usually relax in this regard, not because they don't care, but because intimacy is already established. When she starts investing in lingerie without obvious special occasion, she might be preparing for intimacy with someone who hasn't seen her undressed yet. Another indicator is time spent getting ready for activities where you won't be present. If she's investing more time and effort getting ready for occasions without you than for occasions with you, the priority of impressing has changed. The fifth behavior is where she mentally justifies what she's about to do. And the most effective way to justify betrayal is convincing herself you deserve it. She criticizes you to justify what she's going to do. It's basic human psychology we find in Machiavelli's writings about alliance changes. People rarely do things they consider morally wrong without first creating internal justifications. The most effective way to justify breaking a commitment is convincing herself the other party didn't fulfill their part of the agreement. Have you noticed her criticism has changed tone? Before, when she complained about something, it was specific and solvable. You left dishes dirty, you forgot to call, you arrived late. Practical complaints about specific behaviors that could be corrected. Now criticism is about who you are, not what you do. You're disorganized, you're lazy, you lack ambition, you never listen to me. She attacks your personality, your values, your essence. This narrative serves two crucial psychological functions. First, it reduces anticipated guilt. It's easier to cheat on someone you consider inadequate than someone you consider a good partner. Second, it justifies to herself and others that betrayal was consequence, not choice. That she was driven to it by your inadequacies. Pay attention to frequency and intensity of these criticisms. If she's constantly pointing out your flaws, especially fundamental personality flaws, she might be mentally building the argument to leave you. Also observe if she accepts your improvement attempts or always finds something new to criticize. People who genuinely want you to improve recognize progress. People who want to justify leaving ignore progress and focus on new faults. As Daniel Kahneman explains in Thinking Fast and Slow, our mind seeks narrative consistency, especially when making emotionally charged decisions. The sixth sign happens in the body before it happens in the mind. Observe how she touches you now, not just in bed, during the day when you're watching a movie, when you pass each other in the kitchen, when you say goodbye in the morning. Touch is unconscious body language that reveals more about emotional state than words ever could. An emotionally connected woman touches her partner naturally and frequently, not necessarily sexually. Casual gestures, hand on arm when saying something important, quick kiss when passing by you, long hug when arriving home. When this pattern changes, something has changed internally. If she avoids casual physical contact, if kisses became mechanical, if hugs are quick and polite, her body is reflecting emotional disconnection that the mind hasn't fully admitted yet. Cambridge University neuroscience studies show that physical attraction and emotional connection are neurologically linked. When one decreases, the other follows automatically through changes in oxytocin and dopamine levels. Pay special attention during intimacy, not just if it happens less frequently, but how it happens. If she avoids looking into your eyes during sex, if she seems mentally absent, if she acts like she's fulfilling an obligation instead of expressing desire, her body is signaling that real intimate connection has already been broken. There's a difference between decreased libido due to stress or fatigue and systematic emotional disconnection. In the first, she still shows affection in other ways. In the second, all forms of physical intimacy decrease simultaneously. Also observe when you're in public. Women who feel connected to their partner naturally approach physically in social environments. When she maintains physical distance in public, especially in situations where other men are present, she might be unconsciously signaling availability. The body anticipates decisions the mind is still processing. The seventh pattern is the most revealing of all. When she finds friends you don't know, pay attention, not just to names that appear in conversations, but to the tone she speaks about these people, the frequency of meetings, the nature of activities, her resistance to including you in this new social circle. Women follow logic similar to Machiavelli's studies on political conspiracies when mentally preparing to leave relationships. They build new social circles that don't know you, have no formed opinion about you as a couple, and won't question her decisions about the relationship. Think about her friends, you know, the long-term ones, those who followed your relationship's evolution. These people have emotional investment in the couple's stability. It's hard for her to seek validation for leaving you with people who have complete perspective of the situation. Now observe new friendships, work colleagues who didn't exist before, gym friends who appeared out of nowhere, acquaintances from new courses or hobbies, people who only know the current version of her, not the complete history, people to whom she can present an edited version of relationship problems without context that would complicate the narrative. These new friends serve multiple strategic functions. They offer validation for her frustrations without questioning her share of responsibility. Pay special attention if she resists introducing these new friends to you or including you in activities with them. If she says they're girls-only meetings, that you wouldn't like the environment, that she prefers keeping certain friendships separate from the relationship. This intentional separation allows her to test single waters without confronting the reality that she's still committed. Also observe the advice these friends give. If she frequently mentions how they encourage her to value herself more, not accept certain things, think about what she really wants from life, she might be using these external voices to validate thoughts she already has internally. The eighth and final sign confirms all others. It's when her language about the future changes, in a way that reveals you've been mentally removed from long-term plans. 3 phrases she never says anymore. When we get married, our future house, our children. Language about shared future simply disappeared from daily conversations, and you might not have even noticed consciously, but your subconscious registered the change. In cognitive linguistic studies, Stanford researchers discovered that changes in future language precede changes in actions in 85% of analyzed cases. Our unconscious processes decisions long before the conscious mind admits. When she stops using inclusive language about the future, it's because mentally she's already begun the separation process, even if consciously she's still trying to make the relationship work. Think about the last time she talked about something you would do together in the future. Not next week or next month. Real future next year, 5 years from now, 5 years from. Long-term plans that assume you'll still be together. If you can't remember, she might be unconsciously already planning a future without you. Also observe how she responds when you talk about shared future. Before, she actively participated in these conversations. Now she listens politely but doesn't contribute, or changes the subject, or gives vague answers. Pay special attention to how she talks about personal goals. Before, her individual objectives included consideration of how they would affect you as a couple. Now she talks about career, changes, important decisions as if she were a single person who doesn't need to consult anyone. Another indicator is resistance to making future commitments involving both of you. Before, she was up for planning trips, events, shared goals. Now she prefers keeping options open. Now that you know the signs, you need to know what to do with this information, because recognizing patterns without response strategy is just organized anxiety. Will you pretend you didn't see, or will you act? This is the question that separates strategic men from naive men. Most choose denial because facing reality requires courage they don't have. They prefer living in hope that signs are coincidence, that she's going through a phase, that love will conquer all. As Machiavelli teaches in The Prince, you have a similar choice now. You can keep pretending changes in her behavior are temporary, that the difficult phase will pass, that you just need to be more patient or more romantic. Or you can recognize that behavioral patterns are data, not opinions, and act accordingly. Acting doesn't mean directly confronting her about betrayal suspicions. This rarely produces truth and often accelerates the process you're trying to avoid. Acting means protecting your emotional, financial, and personal interests while working to fully understand the situation. First, stop investing disproportional emotional energy. If she decreased investment in the relationship, you decrease too. Not for revenge, but for self-preservation. Second, expand your own social circle and independent activities. If she's building a parallel life, you build one too. Third, observe without reacting. Collect more information before making definitive decisions. The most effective strategy is applying what Machiavelli called sprezzatura, the art of appearing not to be trying, even when applying sophisticated strategy. Its power demonstrated through emotional control, not through drama. You become less emotionally available, not dramatically or obviously, but gradually and consistently. Stop chasing her validation. Stop trying to solve problems she doesn't want solved. Stop investing more energy in the relationship than she invests. This creates an interesting psychological effect. When you stop chasing, you force her to confront the reality of the situation. If she really wants to leave the relationship, your emotional withdrawal facilitates the process, and everyone leaves with dignity. If she was just testing your value and options, your strategic indifference forces her to choose between losing you or reinvesting in the relationship. Focus energy on your own goals, your own projects, your own social life. It's not about her being a bad person. This is perhaps the hardest lesson to accept, but also the most liberating. The 8 patterns we discussed don't happen because women are manipulative or morally inferior. They happen because they're human beings responding to evolutionary and psychological impulses that have existed for thousands of years. Women evolved to be extremely sensitive to signs that their partner can no longer provide adequate emotional, social, and psychological security. The 8 behaviors aren't conscious strategies. They're unconscious reactions to the feeling that the relationship is no longer serving her evolutionary needs. This doesn't justify betrayal, but explains why patterns are so consistent and predictable. Understanding this completely changes how you interpret female behavior. Instead of taking changes as personal attacks, you recognize them as signs that something fundamental in the relationship dynamic needs adjustment. Most men ignore all these signs because they confuse love with emotional dependency. They believe loving means accepting any behavior, forgiving any change, investing more energy when the other person invests less. This isn't nobility, it's self-destruction, disguised as virtue. The man who identifies the 8 signs but continues trying to save a relationship the other person has already mentally abandoned is demonstrating weakness, not love. Knowing these patterns gives you fundamental strategic advantage. You stop being the man who is surprised and become the man who anticipates. Stop being reactive and become proactive. Stop being victim of circumstances and become architect of your own emotional life. Real power in relationships comes from being willing to lose them to preserve your own value and dignity. Paradoxically, this willingness often saves relationships that can still be saved and accelerates the end of those that were already dead. The 8 signs we discussed are an early warning system that allows you to maintain dignity and control over your emotional life. Use them not to become paranoid or controlling, but to become more aware of real dynamics in your relationships. The man who understands human nature, who recognizes patterns, who acts strategically based on reality instead of fantasy. This man is never caught off guard. He might not avoid all breakups, but he faces them with preparation, dignity, and personal power intact.